Hello and welcome to Island Life with me, Aaron Ibanez. From the rather glorious solitude of the Manx uplands, there's not a single cloud in the sky. I'm just looking at Snaefell as it bears down over Sulby slopes. Sheep are grazing obliviously around me. Then I don't know if you can hear, but there was a peregrine just a moment or two ago crowing over the Druidale road. And the reason I'm out this way, well, I've just caught my breath because I've been pedalling up and out of Inverech. Strangely, with quite a favourable tailwind for a change. Now, just past the Brandywell cottage and out west is a newly built home that boasts quite the environmental credentials and an architecture award for sustainability. Along with being carbon neutral, it also has a nature reserve for a back garden. It's called Sartfell Home, and I'm off to go and meet the couple who live in it. Hey, how you guys doing?
They make a lot of noise, but they're not exactly dangerous.
Peter?
Yeah, you're Aaron?
Yes, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Not bad, thank you. Shoes off, shoes on.
Dr. Peter Lillywhite, his wife Carol, and their two terriers have lived at their secluded Kirkmichael home for a little over a year now, and thanks to the designers, it's become the first Isle of Man property to win a regional award from the Royal Institute of British Architects.
Well, that is the first thing that struck me as soon as I walked in, was the heat.
It's warm in here, isn't
Yeah,
it?
and is that how you like it, I guess?
Well,
Well, we were going to cool it by opening that
The
window.
window.
It's the window.
Yeah, right.
It's tucked into the hillside of Sartfell Mountain, bunker-like, with a massive green panorama of meadowland, plantations, and a chiaroscuro of peaks looking south. That's not forgetting a vast view of the Irish Sea to the west.
We didn't switch the television on for the first 4 months because we just
Why
kept
would
staring
you?
out the window.
Yeah.
Why would you
No,
bother?
exactly. And of course, because
As what could well be one of the highest occupied homes on the island, there's no wonder why the previous owners called the site Cloud 9.
This is the office, which is a great place to watch the birds, as you can imagine. That's Sartfell, so we're fairly near the top, and a lot of birds come across there. Obviously, all the birds of prey. A lot of choughs we get, meadow pipits, pheasants, all sorts of things.
And can you just kind of, it's not a bad thing to say, but waste your day just counting birds, really?
Yes, if you call it waste, then I waste a lot of time.
Oh, very good.
Yes, you're right.
And this is the sort of the living
That's
roof
the-
here.
Both Carol and Peter, especially as a retired ecologist, have a passion for the natural world. The vision for Sartfell is to rewild and restore the 7.5-acre nature reserve which it looks down over, and have rare orchids and wildflowers flourish, all the while overseeing the protection of a new native woodland and the unique habitat of acid bogs.
It's a bit blustery outside, but it's you can't hear it.
No.
And is that to do with the sort of windows you got installed
Well,
here?
we had these windows, some of them were made in England, some in Northern Ireland, because they're hurricane proof. And therefore they're extremely strong, and they're triple glazed, and so they're good for the soundproofing as well.
And that would also explain the sort of the radiation that we're feeling from them
Yeah,
at the
you get a
moment.
lot of radiation because there's so much window.
During construction, a lake was dug to form the site of a ground source heat pump. Stone was then excavated and used in the building of the house.
The lake was quite an effort because you only would go down a couple of feet and it's all rock, but it actually was beneficial because we've used the stone to clad the house. So it's also a classic Manx house in that sense. It looks like a Manx house, and it's very hidden. In fact, when Channel 4 came, when the BBC came, when the RBA people came, they all drove past because they saw the big white cottage, which is what was originally there. And then when they get up to that S-bend, they can see the house and they come back. So we've succeeded in making it certainly not a blot on the landscape, hopefully a good addition to the heritage properties and land of the Isle of Man.
So as the seasons come and go, it's hoped the bunker's facade of Manx stone will weather and blend in with its surroundings by acquiring moss, lichens and even nesting birds.
Is the library or the bookshelf an award-winning bookshelf as well?
I think it was it just the staircase?
So it's staircase and bookshelves.
Staircase and bookshelves, I think.
It was all the same company that did the...
Yeah. West Country Blacksmiths, they did a really good job. And because the architect's design was to have these steps with all the holes in it, which is important because it lets lots of light through.
So that was sort of something that you thought about as well, that idea of sort of a light, bright space?
Well, the architect thought it, and we immediately jumped on it and said, yeah, that's a good idea.
So not many people have a bookcase that spans 2 floors.
No.
Do you know how many books you've got?
Oh, good God, thousands.
There's plenty there.
Yeah.
Having had a brief tour of the site, I sat down with the Lillywhites to get more of an idea of their philosophy behind the house, and indeed their way of life.
Am I right in saying this is carbon neutral, this home?
It is, yeah. It will be when the wind turbine is in. We had a weather station for the first couple of years we were here to measure the solar and wind power. And calculation is that the turbine we're putting in, which is used in the Antarctic and so can work at any speed, will provide all the electricity needed for the entire property, the 2 stables, the cottage.
You can see it's quite windy up here today.
It's one of the windiest places on the island.
Plenty of resource in the wind here, isn't there? Definitely.
Yes.
And we're still in discussion with the planners on exactly where to locate it, because it needs to be away from trees in the house, because birds and bats, hang around there. It needs to be away from any hedges and things, because again, so the birds and bats don't get scared by it.
In regards to the actual spot itself, what made you choose here?
Now that I can answer. I came to the Isle of Man in November 2012 with Carol to visit a friend who's working as a management consultant here, who was a very long-standing colleague of mine, going back to the early 80s. And we came and stayed with him and his wife in Peel, and then after 3 days, we liked the Isle of Man so much, we found it so friendly and it's very safe and it's very beautiful. And I always quote Bellamy's quote that the Isle of Man's like a microcosm of the British Isles, because there are parts like Cornwall or parts like Wales or Scotland or whatever.
All condensed.
All in one relatively small island. So I said, literally, for a laugh, let's look at some properties. And the third property we came to was this one, which is a 7.5 acre property with an old Manx, 19th century Manx cottage. And we went in the cottage and just the views were so fantastic. I put in an offer at that time, which was accepted straight away. So we went through exchange and completion.
Marvellous. And just going back to what you were saying before about access and having this sort of exhibition space at the visitor centre, is that very much something that is at the heart of what you want to achieve here, is enabling that access for everyone to...
Yes, I think it is.
To revel in what you've got here.
To enable access and to provide an opportunity to inform about natural history, sustainability, environmental issues. We're on the Isle of Man where we don't have this problem, but the biggest problem in the world is overpopulation. And climate change is really a consequence, a symptom of that. And there isn't enough talked about that globally, but that's not an issue on the Isle of Man. I think it will be a good resource for school children to come and get interested. And when children get interested in things like natural history, some of them, it becomes a lifelong interest of theirs.
So that was another part of this philosophy as well that I sort of saw upon sort of the synopsis of the house and the build, was that you wanted this place to become a bit of a
nature reserve.
Yeah, exactly, for people to visit and engage with nature, really.
It is, yes. We've made it into a nature reserve. It's fantastic for bird life. We have hen harriers here every day, buzzards most days, peregrines from time to time, kestrels all the time, and all sorts of other birds, obviously, but very good for raptors. It's when we first came, because the land had been used with animals on it, the soil was very rich, which is not good for wildflowers because they can't compete with the grass. Since there have been no animals, and since we've been mowing the meadows and taking all of the grass away, and we use Manx Wildlife Trust as one of our consultants, then I always use as an indicator that the first year we came, we found one orchid, and it's increased every year to the extent that we've now got 1,000. And so all the other wildflowers reflect that. So what was basically grass everywhere has become very full of native wildflowers.
How do you feel about that word rewilding? Because it's certainly entered the vernacular.
Well, it has. I never used it before
conservation.
till this year but I think it's not a bad word, because in fact what has been fairly, I would say, sterile in terms of diversity on the property has become very rich. So it has become a lot wilder. There are a lot more native plants, particularly, and native animals and birds than when we first came.
Our logo for our reserve is we designed to have orchids and a kestrel, because that's the first raptor that came back, wasn't it? And we always seen kestrels. But our motto is, I know it's a bit coy, but restoring nature's treasures. And that's probably a better way is how we see it, rather than rewilding, because rewilding tends to err towards reintroduction of the predators and the sort of food chain. In fact, it's all the sort of treasures that are just in danger of disappearing. So our aim, it goes from mushrooms and fungi to insects, loads more insects. This year we had an abundance of dragonflies,
Mayflies, butterflies. And because of the lake, we've got all of these diving beetles and things like that.
That's right. And we had frogs. The frogs appearing in our garden.
Yeah, wow.
So it's these nuggets, these treasures that we want to restore, and in doing so, we are in fact rewilding it, inverted commas. But
In the process of building and achieving a carbon neutral home, the Lillywhites had to concede that although sourcing local stone, the footprint for concrete was highly emitting. But they have offset that by planting over 100 saplings on the reserve.
It's like the first hybrid cars. They were, if you worked out how much energy was used to make them, they were worse than a normal petrol car, and the batteries particularly. So there are no absolutely clean ways of doing these things. There's always some sort of compromise. But it's a matter of doing your calculations and making sure that overall your efforts will reduce carbon footprints, and in our case also preserve the natural history and beauty of the island.
I left Sartfell inspired by the space that had been created by its custodians, knowing that little slice of upland will continue to grow for the sake of wildlife and people alike under their watch. Fortunate to be in the position where they can build such a home and have the access to heat pumps and hurricane-proof windows, the Lillywhites could afford expense, time and expertise, which is of course not available to everyone. But they're among a growing number of people looking to minimise their impacts in a world where climate change must be addressed. After all, it's recognised that our lifestyles and old habits cannot continue if we're to avoid that threat.
The person you are phoning can't take your call. We will send them your number by text to let them know you've called. Thank you.
I headed north to meet Dan, an off-gridder who is certainly cognisant of this. Come and see how the other side live, he told me on the phone. And so we met on the fringes of the Ramsey Forest, under the canopy of old oak trees.
All I can hear in the morning, well most of the time, is the sound of the wind in the trees, the sound of the water in the glen, the sound of the rain on the roof, and the sound of the birds.
Is that a stream I can hear, or is that just the trees?
You'll probably hear the trees, but you'll see and hear the stream when we get slightly closer.
A short walk up from Crossig's campsite towards the forest, with Sky Hill to our west, and he leads me to his cabin, which he built himself with surplus materials either salvaged or gifted to him by those in the areas, all tucked away under cover from the glen.
Yeah, powerful up here. It's a magic spot, no doubt about it.
So what made you choose it then? I mean, I've got loads of questions because I can't imagine many people are living like this on the Isle of Man. But yeah, what made you choose this spot, and what made you decide to opt for this kind of way of life?
I think the honest answer to both those questions is this spot chose me, and this way of life chose me, really. I was sent here 15 years ago to do community service because I was in breach of a couple of Manx laws when I first came over. Unbeknown to myself, there's no squirrels on the Isle of Man, and I came with a pet squirrel. So they sent me to the campsite just there to do 50 hours of community service. And the fellow who ran the campsite was, I think he was quite impressed with my endeavours, and he asked me if I wanted to stay any longer. So he gave me a little cabin there, and I was there for about 3 or 4 years, doing work on the campsite and living in a little, much smaller cabin to I've got now. It was only 8 feet by 10 feet. Didn't even have room for a bed. I just slept in an armchair. And whilst I was there on the campsite, well, that was when I noticed all the rubbish in this beautiful glen, which I'm still pulling out now. You know, I'm digging my spuds and pulling out old car springs and bits of broken glass and baler's twine.
Yeah, right.
I had sacks of plastic baler's twine. Yeah, them gardens. Gradually getting my gardens up and running. A couple of raised beds, there's my spud plot there.
Yeah.
We crossed a stream, which he and his friends had cleared of junk and scrap metal further up the glen, so it was safe to drink. And into his humble patch we come to raise beds of spinach, beans, kale, courgettes and spuds. But one thing he's making use of is the ginnies.
It's interesting, this area was absolutely, you can still see quite a lot of ginny nettles here, covered in ginny nettles. So they're actually quite nutritious. I've been eating the seeds off them, putting them in my stews. They're quite high in iron. But I don't want them everywhere, so I've been sort of tackling areas of ginny nettles, sort of pulling them out and getting the roots out as well. And it's amazing how many little saplings you see hidden amongst the nettles.
As his humble plot occupies a little corner of a field, he and his ex-landlord put up a fence to stop the grazers getting at his garden, and indeed into the glen.
Prior to that fence being in, there was no barrier to the sheep coming in, so there was nothing growing. You know, they were coming in for breakfast every morning, and all the little baby saplings were just getting munched. So to me the glen was dying, because if the sheep are getting in and the saplings aren't coming through, then when the old trees die, then there'll be no new ones to come through. So
up on the veranda of his cabin, which sits with a stream running alongside it, Dan is keen to show me how he powers his mobile phone with a solar panel on the roof.
It's like living this kind of lifestyle, things take longer. So,
but you're happy to wait.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, it can take me till midday to get everything done. You know, kind of like get the fire cleaned out and get everything. It's just things take longer. You don't just flick a switch. You know, you have to. You know, if you want to get a fire going, you've got to gather the wood, chop the wood, saw the wood, get the. You know, it's kind of like everything just takes that little bit longer.
And that's the complete contrary to the way most people are living their lives now, in that technologies and ways and means are allowing our lives to be more and more convenient and less effort for us, basically. That means as a result of technology and that kind of thing. So for you to revert in this way, you know, I think a lot of people would see this as a huge inconvenience.
If I've got a spare half an hour, it's great. I can sit down, I can listen to the nature, look out the window and just contemplate life. It's lovely.
That is a good philosophy.
Yeah, think about all those people that are rushing around out there.
Well, the irony in this is obviously you wake up of the morning and you can peer across and you can actually see people playing golf.
Yeah.
Which is obviously quite a sophisticated, almost a sport that you'd associate with retirement and whatever else. But yeah, you're not exactly in the complete depths of nature and, you know, lost away. You can watch, you can see civilization from here, can't you? I
I'm
suppose.
kind of on the edge, I think.
Yeah, on the periphery.
Yeah, which is almost a metaphor for my life, I think. So it's quite appropriate that I'm
Right.
here. You know, I've got the wilderness all behind me, and then in front of me I've got civilization, and I'm right on the cusp. I think about the fellas that came over 1,500 years ago and did this sort of thing. They just kind of moved up into the woods and built an old shack, and how did they survive? You know, the keel dwellers, you know? They didn't have taps and wood burning stoves and mobile phone chargers.
Yeah.
You know, that must have been real hardship. And I kind of relate to them because I'm living, it's just like a modern day keel. 21st century monastic life up here, mate,
Yeah.
you know. Take your shoes off, you can put your feet up. That's what I like.
We
Yeah,
headed
that's a good
inside
mantra.
to an as expected simplistic yet homely cabin with a view overlooking Ramsey and further northward. There was a chair and a desk, a sofa bed and a kitchen sideboard equipped with a sink alongside a gas stove. And it was monastic, with one wall shrine-like with a framed picture of Jesus Christ, draped in a Tottenham Hotspur football
you're a
scarf,
Spurs fan.
decorated with Celtic tokens and iconography. But the real pride and centrepiece was of course the wood-burning stove. It cost Dan £100, more than the cost of putting up the cabin itself.
You're talking about how important it is for you to, you know, how reliant you are on it, I guess, in terms of heat and drying your clothes and boiling your water and everything. This is integral to this home.
I don't think I could live here without my wood burning stove, no. I completely burnt the baffle plate out. So I bought a new baffle plate for it. It cost about 50 quid.
Oh yeah.
But they, I think they're about £1,000 new, these stoves.
Mm-hmm.
So it was an absolute bargain. Yeah.
So when you get this lit, it just fills the whole room with heat, does it?
Yeah, I mean,
Doesn't take long.
I had to have the door and the windows open last night.
Really?
Oh yeah, yeah, it's just too hot. Yeah, I've got it up to 27 degrees in here 2 or 3 times. I've got a little thermometer that's at the cool end. I don't know what it is at this end. There's a thermometer at the other end of the cabin. And a couple of times last winter I got it up. I'm like, oh God, it's so hot. Opening all the doors and windows, 27 degrees again. Yeah, I was fully insulated this place, so yeah.
Pops explains. Just because you give up drinking doesn't mean that tomorrow
A good
your life
old-fashioned
is going to
wireless.
suddenly be
Great that. Long way. Love me long way.
Yeah.
I can get RTE long way. And I can get Radio 4 as well.
But that's quite nostalgic to be able to hear the Irish radios.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it, yeah.
I floated the idea of total self-sufficiency to Dan and whether it's something he wants to strive towards. However, given the sheer generosity from the local community in helping Dan make his cabin a reality, it wasn't something that he had his sights set on.
But the reason I was given that brand new window is because Chris the builder down the bottom, he said to me one day, he said, oh, I've measured a window wrong. He said, I'm 50 mil over. He says, no good to me. It won't fit in the hole at the build. Do you want it? £350 window. Do you want it? Oh, cheers.
Wow.
See, that's the kindness and goodness of humanity, mate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I've found in my life, you know, it's like if you're doing the right thing, you'll get help. That's why building this to me was just so the right thing to be done, because the proof of the pudding is there. The help that I got is proof that it was the right thing. That's, you know, that's possibly my own personal philosophy, but it's kind of like, yeah, things like that. I mean, I've got tons of stories about the magic of how this place went up, you know.
What you've sort of set up for yourself here is obviously it's almost anti-modern in some respects. You know, you've chosen not to go for fancy technology and whatever else. Just the basics that you feel is all we need.
I was once described as a relic from the future.
That's a very good description, that. Right.
Yeah.
Do you think more people will live like this in the future?
Yes.
Why?
Because for me, my human nature is enhanced by being close to the natural nature around me. We all like going for a walk in the woods. Everybody likes to go out, take the dog for a walk, get out. Do you know what I mean? We all love it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're all aware that nature's good for us. No, I can't see any reason why more and more people wouldn't take to this kind of lifestyle if they had that kind of semi-feral nature in them. Then why not? Yeah, I mean, I'm not the only one living like this on the island. I know of a good few others. You know, this is how I like to live, and I'm not complaining.
They soak up pollution really well.
Lovely.
Ah, right.
They soak it up in the leaves and they shed their bark.
And so I left the semi-feral relic of the future that is Dan and his interminable giggle, glad that I'd met him and glad to know his Crossings cabin had acquired another neighbour.